Michael had always believed loyalty was enough. Growing up in a quiet neighborhood with a single mother who worked 2 jobs to put food on the table, he learned early that the people closest to you mattered more than anything else. So when Rosa walked into his life, full of charm and soft laughs, he let his guard down. She wasn't like the others. At least, that's what he told himself every time she smiled at him, tucked her hair behind her ear, and whispered secrets like they belonged to him. They met at a mutual friend's birthday party in a crowded downtown bar. She wore a red dress that didn't beg for attention, but still stole it. Michael wasn't the type to chase, but he offered to buy her a drink, and she accepted with a shrug like she knew she was doing him a favor. That night turned into a week of texts, then late-night calls, then slow walks through the city. Within a month, Rosa was a permanent part of Michael's world. She met his friends. She sat across from his mom at Sunday dinners. She slept in his bed more nights than her own. Then came John. He was Michael's oldest friend. The kind of man who could charm a room without trying, who had a knack for knowing things before you said them. He and Michael were brothers in all but blood. So when John said he wanted to introduce a new business idea, some real estate flips, that could set them both up for life, Michael didn't blink. He trusted him. Rosa sat beside Michael the night John brought the idea over. She poured the wine, laughed at their jokes, and even offered suggestions. Michael remembered thinking how lucky he was to have them both. He couldn't know then that he was the only one not in on the joke. The cracks started small. John's calls slowed down. Rosa became distant, staying late at work or canceling their dinner plans. At first, Michael chalked it up to stress. He was busy too, after all. But then Ida showed up. Ida was sharp, the kind of woman who watched everything and said only what mattered. She was John's ex, and from what Michael had heard, the two had ended badly. She reached out to Michael one morning through a message on social media, short, cryptic: "Be careful who you trust. Rosa and John aren't who they seem." Michael didn't respond at first. He stared at the message for days, torn between disbelief and the sick feeling growing in his stomach. When he finally met Ida in person, she didn't waste time. "They're sleeping together," she said flatly. "Have been for a while. And that business idea, it's not for you. It's just a way for John to clean his mess. You're the cover." Michael didn't want to believe her, but he did start watching more closely. Rosa's phone, always upside down. John's avoidance. The missing money in their joint investment account. A voicemail left by accident. John's voice low, intimate, unmistakably familiar, whispering something to Rosa that shattered the last thread of Michael's denial. He didn't confront them. Not yet. He wanted to be sure. Wanted to see just how far they'd go before they told him the truth. That's when he started playing dumb, acting like he didn't notice, letting Rosa think he still trusted her, laughing at John's stupid jokes, while mentally counting every lie. The worst part, he still loved her. Or maybe it was the version of her she let him believe in. That version was dead now. So he waited, planned, and when the moment came, he'd make sure both of them regretted ever thinking he was a fool. The waiting was the hardest part. Every time Rosa curled up beside him at night, pretending nothing was wrong, Michael had to bite back the anger boiling in his throat. Her lies tasted like sugar, now sweet, gentle, and poisonous. She still kissed him like she meant it, but her eyes were always somewhere else. He started documenting everything. Receipts, emails, voice memos. John had gotten sloppy. He didn't know Michael had access to the back end of their shared business account. A few late-night logins showed wire transfers that didn't make sense, money rerouted through dummy companies Michael had never approved. It was all in John's name, but Rosa's name showed up, too, in texts, meeting logs, and photos taken by Ida. Ida was relentless. She brought him the evidence like clockwork. Photos of Rosa and John having lunch in spots far from the city, Rosa slipping into John's car late at night, a hotel reservation under a fake name that Michael cracked in minutes. It was insulting how little effort they put into hiding it, like they'd already written him off. "I warned you," Ida said one evening, sitting across from Michael at a diner with peeling boots and greasy menus. "They think you're soft, that you'll break quietly." Michael stirred his coffee without drinking it. "They're wrong." He was building something now. Not revenge exactly, it was too calculated for that. He was going to dismantle them, piece by piece. He began with Rosa. "Babe," he said one night, lying next to her in bed, her back pressed against him like old times. What would you do if someone betrayed you? Like really betrayed you? She tensed just a little, barely noticeable, but enough. I don't know. Depends on who it is, she replied. What if it was someone you loved? He asked. I'd leave, she said, then added after a beat. Why? Did something happen? Michael smiled against her hair. Just thinking. Stuff at work. She relaxed. But he saw it. The way her hand hesitated when she reached for his. The way she watched him in the mirror when she thought he wasn't looking. He played his role perfectly. A little tired, a little distant, but still trusting. And then he baited the hook. He let John believe he was investing in another property, something big, outside the city. He talked it up in front of Rosa, left accidental notes on the kitchen counter. He even pretended to take calls with a fake developer, talking loudly so Rosa would hear. And just like that, they bit. Rosa suddenly became warmer again, touchier. She laughed at his jokes more. John started calling more often, asking for updates, pretending to care about Michael's opinion. Michael played along. The plan was simple: set them up for a final deal too big to ignore, while secretly working with a lawyer and Ida to transfer all the real property to himself, and freeze any shared accounts. But something unexpected happened. Rosa cried, not fake tears either. Real ones. The kind that shook her shoulders and left her gasping for breath. It happened one night after dinner, as they sat on the balcony, the city lights flickering like tiny lies below them. I messed everything up, she whispered. Michael didn't speak. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she went on. I was lost. John, he knew how to talk to me. He made me feel like I wasn't invisible. And I thought you didn't care anymore. You were always so focused on the business. He almost laughed. You were my everything. He wanted to say, I did it all for you. Instead, he let her cry. Let her pour it all out. The affair, the plan to cut him out of the business, the guilt that built. Too late to save anything. I still love you, she said, tears wetting his shirt. Michael held her. He said nothing, because now it was her turn to believe a lie. Michael didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed with Rosa beside him, her breathing shallow and uneven, like her own guilt haunted her dreams. He stared at the ceiling, not from confusion, but from a slow burning fire inside him that refused to go out. Her confession didn't cleanse her. It didn't change the fact that she only cried because she thought the game was over and she'd lost. She never cried when she was winning. The next morning, she made breakfast like nothing had happened. Eggs, toast, and that peppermint tea she always claimed calmed her nerves. Michael sat at the kitchen table, watched her move around like the same Rosa he once adored, and realized just how much of a stranger she had become. I've been thinking, she said, placing his plate in front of him. Maybe we should get away for a bit. Just you and me, somewhere quiet. It was a trap. He saw it in her eyes. Her sudden change of heart wasn't love, it was fear. She could feel something slipping, and she wanted to grab onto him before it was too late. That sounds nice, Michael replied, his voice smooth, unreadable. But I've got a few things to wrap up with John first. She hesitated. You're still working with him? Yeah, he said, chewing slowly. It's business. Rosa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She was panicking behind that calm mask. By the end of the week, Michael had everything in place. The fake deal was finalized. The fake paperwork signed. A non-existent investor named Martin C. Fields had wired a very real-looking $500,000 into a holding account that John had been begging to access. Of course, John didn't know that account was monitored, that every keystroke was being recorded, and that Ida had slipped into his condo the night before to grab a spare hard drive and some files she'd once left behind. Ida was the wild card. In all this, she didn't want revenge. Not really. She wanted truth. And she wanted John to suffer for what he did to her when they were together. She never told Michael the details. She didn't have to. He saw it in her eyes, the same hollow betrayal he now carried in his chest. The final meeting was set at a quiet hotel bar on the edge of the city. Michael invited John and Rosa both, told them the investor wanted to meet everyone involved before the final transfer. It was supposed to be a celebration, he said. Rosa wore a black dress this time. John showed up in a suit too expensive for someone supposedly struggling with debt. Michael arrived last, calm and unreadable. They all sat around the table, drinks in hand, pretending like none of them knew the truth. So, John said, leaning back, when do we meet the guy Michael sipped his drink. Soon, they made small talk for a while. John cracked jokes. Rosa kept looking at Michael like she wanted to speak, but didn't know how. Maybe she hoped for a last-minute save. Maybe she still thought she could pull him back in. But then Michael pulled out his phone and played the recording. John's voice, low and unmistakable, saying things no business partner ever should. Rosa's laugh, soft and intimate, following right after. They were planning openly how to cut Michael out, how to take what was his. Rosa's face went white. John shot up, knocking over his drink. "What the hell is this?" John barked. Michael stared at him, calm, unmoving. "You should have known better," he said. "Both of you." He stood, dropped a folder on the table. Inside were transfer papers, bank freezes, evidence of fraud, photos, voicemails, everything. "Meet your new business partner," Michael said, nodding toward the doorway. Ida stepped in. Rosa gasped. John swore under his breath, and Michael walked out. He didn't need to see the fallout. He'd already won. Michael didn't look back as he walked out of that hotel bar. Behind him, chaos was unfolding. John shouting, Rosa begging, Ida calmly laying out the wreckage like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. But for Michael, it was over. The moment the door shut behind him, it felt like air filled his lungs for the first time in months. A weight, invisible but crushing, had finally lifted. He drove through the city without a destination, windows down, the cold evening air slicing through his thoughts. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He just felt everything. The betrayal, the months of pretending, the ache of what could have been. All of it burned quietly in his chest like a fire that no longer needed fuel. That night, he didn't go home. He stayed at a cheap hotel on the edge of town, the kind where no one asked questions and the walls were thin enough to hear someone else's problems. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above him, the silence louder than anything Rosa or John had ever said. By morning, his phone was full of missed calls and messages. "Rosa, please talk to me, Michael. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. John, you better fix this. You don't know what you're doing." Ida. They're both freaking out. "I haven't seen John this scared since the IRS came knocking." "We're almost there." Michael ignored them all. Instead, he walked into a lawyer's office at a M Sharp. The same lawyer who had quietly redrafted the contracts, frozen the joint account, and handed Michael the financial knife he needed to cut John and Rosa out of the business cleanly. "Everything's filed," the lawyer said. "By the end of the week, the properties are fully yours. They won't be able to touch a thing." Michael nodded. Good. There was one last thing he needed to do. That night, he showed up at Rosa's apartment unannounced. She answered the door in a hoodie and leggings, face puffy from crying, eyes red-rimmed and desperate. She stepped aside to let him in without a word. The apartment looked different now. Cold, sparse. The magic had died in the space. The moment truth cracked through the lies. "I didn't know how to stop," she said quietly, hands trembling as she gripped the hem of her hoodie. "It just happened." "You lied to me for months," Michael replied. "It didn't just happen." She sank onto the couch. "I thought I could fix it before you found out. I never wanted to lose you." "You never wanted to lose the lifestyle," he said. Her head shot up. "That's not fair. You were going to steal from me, with him. And you're sitting here talking about what's fair." Rosa blinked, silent. Michael stood still for a moment, just watching her. The woman he thought he'd spend his life with looked so small now, so fragile. And yet, he felt nothing. "I came to say goodbye," he said. Her lip trembled. "You don't have to. We can start over." "No, Rosa. You just want to rewind. But the damage is done, and I won't be the fool who stays behind for someone who already moved on." She reached for him. He stepped back, and then he left, down the hallway, down the stairs, out into the street. This time, there was no guilt in his step, no pain, no heartbreak, just peace. She played him for a fool, but now he was the one in control. He was the queen on the board, moving without fear, and Rosa and John were just pawns in a game they no longer understood. Word spread faster than Michael expected. Within a week, whispers turned into rumors, and rumors into undeniable truth. John's reputation in the investment scene took a nosedive. Clients pulled out, meetings were canceled, and people who once smiled in his direction now refused to return his calls. His name had been toxic before, but now it was radioactive. The kind of reputation that didn't recover. Michael didn't need to lift a finger. Everything John had built off the backs of others was crumbling, and Michael had made sure it happened in silence. No big reveal, no gloating, no press, just quiet humiliation. The kind that cut deeper because no one came to save you. As for Rosa, she disappeared from social media, deleted her accounts, quit her job, moved out of her apartment. Michael didn't know where she went, and honestly, he didn't care. He figured she was probably staying with a friend, maybe licking her wounds, rewriting the story in her head to make herself the victim. That was always Rosa's skill, never being the villain in her own mind. Ida, on the other hand, was thriving. She came to the office often now, confident and composed, wearing suits that matched her sharpness. She wasn't there to flirt or to reminisce. She just wanted results. She had skin in the game now, both in the rebuilt business and in the fallout she helped cause. I have to admit, she said one afternoon, lounging in Michael's office chair while he read through contracts, I thought you'd snap halfway through this, break down, scream at her, punch John in the mouth, something dramatic. Michael didn't look up. I considered it, but you didn't, because I wanted it to last, he replied. Screaming ends, ruin sticks. Ida let out a low whistle. Remind me not to get on your bad side. He finally looked at her. You're not on my bad side. Yet, she smirked. They both knew they weren't friends, not really. They were allies, brought together by betrayal. But there was something between them now, a strange unspoken understanding, a closeness forged not by love, but by war. A few days later, Michael got an unexpected visitor, John. He showed up at the office, unannounced, wearing an unshaven face and desperation like a second skin. Security called up, and Michael, out of nothing but curiosity, told them to let him through. You've got 5 minutes, Michael said coldly as John walked in. John didn't sit. He stood there, shifting, the cockiness long gone. I messed up. No kidding. I didn't mean to screw you over. I thought I could handle both. You and her. The money and the friendship. Michael raised an eyebrow. You thought betraying me and stealing from me would work out for everyone? It was a mistake. Michael laughed under his breath. You make it sound like you dropped a glass of water, John. You tried to rob me blind. I lost everything, John said, his voice cracking now. You made sure of that. Michael leaned back in his chair. No. You did that. I just let people see who you really are. John nodded slowly, his pride shattered. So what now? You gonna drag this out? Sue me? Leave me for dead? Michael stared at him for a long moment. No, you're already dead to me. John flinched. Michael leaned forward. But I want you to remember something. Every time you see a deal fall through, every time a door closes in your face, every time you lie awake wondering where it all went wrong, it was me. Silence hung heavy between them. John didn't say another word. He turned and left. Michael didn't watch him go. He had better things to do. And now that the dust had settled, he finally had the power to build something that couldn't be stolen. Weeks passed, and for the first time in a long while, Michael's life felt still. Not numb, not hollow, just still. There were no lies waiting for him at the door. No need to second-guess someone's touch or words. He woke up each morning, brewed his coffee in silence, and watched the sun rise over a city that had once felt too loud. Now, it belonged to him. The office was thriving. With John out of the picture and Rose's drama buried, Michael rebuilt the business brick by brick. He hired people he could trust, not just those who smiled in meetings. Deals were made carefully, with contracts triple-checked and no room for backdoors. Every move was deliberate, every win personal. Ida kept showing up. T first. It was business, progress reports, development pitches, strategy sessions. Then she started staying longer, bringing coffee, leaving books on his desk, sitting silently while he worked, the air between them humming with something neither of them said out loud. There was no romance, not yet, but there was something deeper, a respect that ran beneath the surface, a knowing. One Friday evening, after everyone had left, she stood in his doorway, jacket slung over her shoulder. You ever gonna let go of it? She asked. Michael looked up from his screen. Let go of what? The anger, the ghost of them. He stared at her for a moment, then closed his laptop. You think I haven't? I think it still lives in your silence, she said. And in the way you talk like you're never gonna let anyone close again. Michael stood, walked past her to the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars. I trusted them with everything. My heart, my loyalty, my future. I know. And they treated it like something disposable. Like I was a placeholder in my own life. I'd stepped beside him. But you're not anymore. He turned to her. No, he said. Now I'm the one writing the story. She nodded, her gaze steady. So start the next chapter. They stood there a while, saying nothing, the tension quiet but present. Michael didn't know if this would turn into something. He didn't know if he was ready, but he knew one thing. He wasn't the same man who once waited around for love to prove itself. He didn't need Rosa. He didn't need John's approval. He didn't even need closure. He was the closure. A few nights later, he got a letter in the mail. No name. Just an address in another state. Inside, a handwritten note. I think about what we had. I still love you. I know it's too late. I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you'll remember the good parts too. Rosa. He folded the letter once and tossed it into the fireplace. He didn't hate her anymore, but he didn't need to remember the good parts. He'd learned his lesson. The people who love you don't have to hurt you first to prove it. And the ones who do, they don't get a second chance. The seasons shifted, and with them, so did Michael. He didn't realize how much weight he'd carried until it was finally off him. The business, now under his full control, ran smoother than ever. No backdoor deals, no whispered betrayals. Just clean work with clean people. The kind of empire built on scars, not illusions. Ida became more than just a presence. Slowly, without either of them announcing it, she became a fixture in his days. They still hadn't crossed any lines. No kiss, no late-night confessions. But the way she looked at him sometimes told him everything. She understood him in a way Rosa never could, because Ida had bled too. She knew what betrayal did to a person, how it turned trust into a fortress with no gates. One night, they were the last two at the office again. Rain streaked the windows, and the city outside looked quiet, like it was holding its breath. Ida sat on the edge of his desk, a glass of wine in hand. You know, she said, when I first messaged you, I didn't expect you to respond. I thought you'd either ignore me or accuse me of being bitter. You were bitter, Michael replied, smirking slightly. Still am, she said, sipping. But not at you. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. You didn't do what they did. No, she agreed, setting the glass down. But I didn't warn you soon enough either. You warned me when it mattered, he said. She looked at him, serious now. You don't have to do this alone, you know. This life, the walls, the silence, it doesn't have to be permanent. He didn't respond right away. He wasn't used to the idea of letting someone in again, not this soon. But then again, Ida didn't want to tear down his walls. She just wanted to stand behind them with him. And that, he could live with. He nodded slowly, one day at a time. A small smile tugged at her lips. That's all I ask. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The understanding between them ran deeper than touch. The next few weeks blurred in the rhythm of work and quiet companionship. They made changes to the company branding, expanded into new markets, and restructured their internal teams. Michael felt himself loosening, not unraveling, just breathing again, letting life happen without flinching every time someone got close. And then, one afternoon, a courier dropped off a letter from a lawyer. John was suing him. Michael read the papers without blinking. Defamation, business interference, and emotional distress. A last-ditch effort from a man who had nothing left to lose. He handed the envelope to Ida. She skimmed it, then snorted. This is pathetic. He's cornered, Michael said. He's reaching. What are you going to do? Michael leaned back in his chair. Absolutely nothing. Ida raised an eyebrow. Nothing? He wants a war. He wants attention. He wants me to play his game. She grinned slowly. And what do you want? I want to make him irrelevant. And that's exactly what he did. He didn't respond to the lawsuit, his lawyer did. Efficiently, brutally, with facts, evidence, and records so clean and airtight that John's case died before it made it past the first hearing. Within a month, it was dismissed. No press, no trial, no attention, just silence. Michael didn't even call to gloat, because by then, John didn't matter. He was just a memory in a chapter Michael no longer reread. Months rolled by, and the shadows of the past finally started to fade into the background. Michael wasn't chasing peace anymore. He'd found it. Not in some dramatic closure or final confrontation, but in the slow, quiet days that followed. in the normalcy. In the mornings he spent alone, sipping coffee by his window. In the steady rhythm of building something real, he still thought of Rosa sometimes. Not with longing, just recognition. Like someone remembering a fire they once stood too close to. The pain had stopped, but the memory of the heat remained. She had tried to reach out a second time. A voicemail this time, short and tired. I don't expect forgiveness. Just, I hope you're okay. He deleted it without replying, because she was right. He was more than okay. The company had expanded into 3 cities now. Real estate deals that once felt like dreams were now just paperwork and signatures. He had earned a reputation, not for being ruthless, but for being sharp, methodical, and fair. People respected him because he didn't play games, he ended them. And Ida? She was still there, only now. It wasn't just business. It started small. Dinner at her place after long meetings. A touch on his arm when she laughed. Late night drives where they talked about everything except the past. She never pushed, never asked for more than he was ready to give. She just stayed. Until one night, when he finally let the past go, they were at his apartment, watching some old film neither of them cared about. Ida leaned into him on the couch, her head resting against his chest, his arm wrapped loosely around her shoulder. You still think about her? She asked softly. Michael didn't lie. Sometimes, not in the way I used to. Ida looked up at him. And me? He met her eyes. You're here now. And then finally, they kissed. Not rushed, not desperate, just real. It felt like the first honest moment he'd had in years. From that night on, everything changed, but nothing felt forced. They moved slowly, naturally. There were no grand declarations, no fireworks, just presence, trust, the kind that came from being broken and choosing to rebuild with someone who knew exactly where the cracks were. 1 year later, the company celebrated its $10 million milestone. Michael gave a speech at the rooftop event, short, composed. He didn't mention John. He didn't mention Rosa. He didn't need to, because standing at the edge of everything he had built, Ida's hand in his, Michael knew this was the real victory. Not the money, not the power, but the fact that he had been played, broken, humiliated, and he had risen anyway. Not as someone's backup plan, not as someone's victim, but as the king who was written off, and rose as the queen in the game of their regret. The game ended, and he rewrote the rules.